Hey, John Davis, mudmoblood.com, and today we're going to talk about primary clutch springs. Okay, here you can see the CVT cover. There are eight bolts holding it on. You have to be very careful when you're putting them back in, especially because they're soft and they will strip off. They're real bad about stripping off right here at the end of this little cylinder, and they're not easy to get back out either, trust me. Alright, if you've snorkeled your bike, you can remove this cover without taking the side plastic off. Once you got all the 8 bolts out, loosen the band on your snorkel there. You got two electrical plugs. Don't forget to take them off. And then the cover comes right out of the way. Now, primary, secondary, just for those of you who have never done this before. Now, if all you're doing is changing the primary spring, then you don't have to take anything else off. It's very simple. All you have to do is remove each of these bolts around the plate, and then remove the center bolt. It is left-hand thread, so this is not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's just the opposite. Your right is loose. Now this clutch does free spin, so you will have to shove a rod through it or hold it with one hand, or get a buddy to help you. Anyway, remove those 10 bolts, remove the main bolt, and then this cover just slides right off. Now if you have a stock primary spring in there, there's not enough tension on it to just push this plate away. It should come right off fairly easy. There shouldn't be any tension on it when you remove this center bolt. Now I put in a maroon colored primary with just a little bit longer than a stock primary. Here's the stock primary. You can see it's really not all that long. When you put a longer primary in, this plate isn't going to butt right back up against the housing here. You're gonna have to push it against the spring and then start your bolt and get it back to the point where it's gonna hold the plate for you. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to sit here and use your hand to hold the plate and try and start all these bolts, and that's aggravating. So once you've got your bolt back in, get a little pressure on the plate, line it up, put all your bolts back in, tighten them down. Now the center bolt has to be tightened to 69 foot-pounds. You don't want to tighten this just by hand. So 69 foot-pounds of torque on this main bolt here. These again, they're soft. They will strip if you're not careful. Just run them down tight with your hand, and then use your socket to tighten them, but don't over tighten them. And that's all there is to changing a primary spring. Alright, after you've got your plate back on, your bolts torqued to 69 foot-pounds of torque, all your other little bolts are back in, you got everything buttoned up, you've checked your belt looks good, no tears, no frays, no cuts, it looks good. Set your CVT cover back in place, line it up, put all your bolts back in, but remember, once again, thread these in by hand. Don't put them in with your socket. If you can reach in there and thread them in by hand, thread them in by hand as far as you can. Then you can take an extension in your socket or whatever and tighten them down a little bit more. If you have like a T-handle wrench, that is probably best to use one of those. That way you don't accidentally put too much force on them. Tighten them all about the same, get them all hand tight about the same, then take your T-handle wrench or your socket and just tighten them just a little bit more till they start to snug up. Just to be safe, before you put your housing back on, just look and make sure you didn't flip your reset switch there. You know, it's not just going to trip on its own when you take it off and lay it on the ground, but just make sure you didn't accidentally bump it and switch it to off. You can see over here is off and over here is on.